I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank this beautiful representation of the state of Michigan here behind me this morning. You know, I look around here, I see some of the most important leaders who truly represent what it means to be a Michigander. I see a group of passionate public servants who will stop at nothing to do the right thing. And I see a group who rejects the backwards laws that say you can only get married on Sunday, or that if you can't get married, that you will be legally fired from your job, or kicked out of your apartment, or denied service at a restaurant the day after you got married. For decades, we've watched as lawmakers have repeatedly attempted to right the wrongs of history by introducing legislation that guarantees comprehensive legal protections for all Michiganders. It has been 36 years since the first LGBTQ protections were first introduced in our state. It has been 50 years since those historic moments at Stonewall that began the movement for complete equality. But it will be this year in the state of Michigan when we finally get it done. I couldn't think of a better way to kick off Pride Month in 2019 than introducing this piece of legislation to enshrine these fundamental rights into law. They say elections have consequences, but I say those consequences have the ability to make history. And with that, I'm happy to introduce a leader who has made history in his own right, my friend, my parents' state senator, and Michigan's first openly gay senator, Jeremy Moss.
Well, good morning, everybody. This is really a historic morning for all of us here, and I'm so honored that we are doing this, and doing this in the governor's office, no less. I want to introduce some of our partner organizations and officials that are here with us, as well as many of our colleagues in both the House and Senate. Alana McGuire, who is president of Fair Michigan, Julissa Abad, who is Trans Director of Advocacy and Outreach for the Fair Michigan Foundation, Dave Garcia, who's Executive Director of Affirmations, along with Mike Flores, the Board Chair, Marissa Kovach, Policy Strategist from the ACLU, Lee Gonzalez from the Department of Civil Rights, Ryan Seabolt, England County Commissioner, and Derek Dobies, Mayor of Jackson, both affiliated with the AFL-CIO, Cynthia Thornton, President of Pride at Work Michigan, a constituency group at the AFL-CIO. And this just goes to show you what a broad coalition we have. And we have more information of other partnering organizations that are supporting our efforts here today to expand the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act. Happy Pride Month also to everybody here. It's an honor to be up here with everybody, and just as you know, June kicks off LGBT Pride Month, and our community celebrates throughout the state of Michigan with Pride Fests from every corner of the state of Michigan. We just had a wonderful Pride Festival in my district in Ferndale over the weekend to show our community's vitality there. And while we have a lot to celebrate with one another, it's important to remember our history and the history of June as Pride Month. This month marks 50 years since the Stonewall Uprising, when members of the LGBTQ community in New York stood up against savage police tactics that were used to shame our community. On June 28, 1969, and for several following nights, members of the community stood up and fought back and protested, and that had a ripple effect around the entire country. So June as Pride Month began not as a celebration, but as a liberation against decades of harassment, embarrassment, and discrimination that the LGBTQ community has faced. And in the 50 years since that liberation movement began, we continue to face setbacks, including here in Michigan. It was 24 years ago this month, in June of 1995, that the Michigan House voted to ban marriage equality in statute, which of course later became enshrined in a constitutional amendment in 2004. And it was 4 years ago this month, in June of 2015, that a former governor signed a law codifying adoption discrimination. And although we've seen progress march on in many ways to undo that discrimination, today, 50 years since Stonewall, you can still be fired for being gay or trans here in Michigan. You can be denied housing or evicted just for being gay or trans here in Michigan. But today, in June, we're going to make another historic moment, another historic June moment in Michigan for the LGBT community, because we finally have representation in both chambers for the first time, and we have an ally in a sitting governor standing with us in this fight for equality and civil rights. I was proud to stand with the governor in Ferndale just in the first week of her new administration when she signed her executive directive to strengthen protections against LGBTQ discrimination in state employment. And now I'm proud to stand with her and Representative Hoadley and many of our colleagues as we introduce our legislation to expand the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act to include sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression as protected classes here in Michigan. I know we have a strong coalition to push this civil rights expansion, and at long last provide justice and equity for the LGBTQ community here in Michigan. And for the last 4 years that I've served in the legislature, I have had a true partner in this. And on a personal note, we came in together into the State House as only the second openly LGBT members of the legislature. And I can tell you, if I had to do this alone, it would have been a very isolating feeling. So for the last 4 years, I've really, truly appreciated our partnership on this work. And I want to introduce Representative Jon Hoadley, who will give more remarks about the historic nature of today's event.
Thank you, Senator Moss, and it feels so good to say Senator Moss. So my name's Jon Hoadley. I have the pleasure and honor of being the state representative for Kalamazoo. And I'm excited about the moment we're at today because there's an American moment and a Michigan moment that's happening right now. America and Michigan supports full equality. At a time when we see historic passage of the Equality Act in Congress, and for the first time, bipartisan support of the expanding of the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act here in the Michigan House, we know that there is a viable pathway forward. And we have a governor who, if we put this on her desk, will sign those bills. Because we finally have an ally who understands a very simple tenet. Regardless of who you are or who you love, you should be welcome here in Michigan. 36 years. Conversations that stretch across families. And finally, co-sponsors from both sides of the aisle who say we want to get this done. Because at the end of the day, equality should not be a partisan issue. So by seeing bipartisan support, we are moving past the roadblocks that we have seen in the past. And in a state where we've been doing historic legislation lately, let's make sure that we can get this done too. Now, we don't get to this point without the support and help of important organizations across the state. To bring voice to this work, I'm proud to introduce one of my constituents, one of my friends, the Vice Mayor of Kalamazoo and the Executive Director of Equality Michigan, Aaron Knott.
Thank you, Representative Hoadley. Good morning. Again, my name is Aaron Knott, and I am thrilled to be here with all of you in this packed room. This is a great day. The time has come to modernize Michigan's policies to make it clear that discrimination against the LGBTQ community will not be tolerated. I stand here today representing the staff of Equality Michigan, our supporters, and the Joint Board of Directors to call upon the legislature to move forward in a bipartisan manner by taking swift action in 2019. Did you know that LGBTQ inclusion is good for our economy? As more and more businesses make this connection, they are stepping forward to make the economic case for non-discrimination protections and against discriminatory laws. As an example, 91% of Fortune 500 companies welcome lesbian, gay, and bisexual employees with inclusive policies that protect against discrimination. And 83% of Fortune 500 companies include gender identity in their policies. Despite the progress, 46% of LGBT workers report being closeted at work, and 27% of transgender people who held or applied for a job in the last year reported being fired, not hired, or denied a promotion due to their gender identity. Additionally, 1 in 4 LGBTQ employees report experiencing employment discrimination in the last 5 years, and nearly 1 in 10 have left a job because the environment was unwelcoming. LGBT supportive policies are linked to less discrimination, greater job commitment, improved health outcomes, and increased productivity. When LGBT employees do not feel welcome at work, they're less likely to stay, and employee turnover is a drag on Michigan's economy and our business competitiveness. It costs companies an average of $9,600 to replace an employee in Michigan, and it can cost up to $440,000 to replace a senior executive. Furthermore, 4% of Michigan's residents identify as LGBTQ, Conservatively, that's LGBT personal income of $19 billion. It's a market that businesses in Michigan cannot afford to ignore. Non-discrimination policies that allow LGBT people to participate more fully in the economy are good for our bottom line. Michigan must expand the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act to be inclusive of LGBT people and make economic impact would be significant. One estimate suggests Michigan's economy could grow by nearly 3%. That equivalents to $15.2 billion. Equality Michigan agrees with statements that Governor Whitmer has made in the past. Michigan employers, in order for them to be competitive and attract top talent, we must have workplaces and communities that are diverse and welcome the LGBTQ community. Equality Michigan also believes that treating Michiganders and visitors fairly is essentially to maintaining Michigan's strong brand as the premier home for talented workers, growing businesses, entrepreneurial innovation, and a thriving travel and tourism industry. The bottom line is Michigan should be open to all and serve everyone on the same terms. It's time to ensure fairness for all Michigan employees, residents, consumers, and visitors. A united Michigan is a competitive Michigan. It is now my distinct honor to introduce my friend and colleague, Janice Poindexter, who serves as our trans advocate at Equality Michigan, as well as a board member of the Trans Sister of Colors Project. Janice.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for sharing space with us. I got kind of emotional standing here because so these laws and these policies directly affect me because I am a proud trans woman of color, and I do receive the brunt of violence and murder and injustice here in Michigan and throughout. So this is important to me because as far as I know, there are 2 trans women of color that are currently occupying this space, and I'm one of them. So this is huge for us beyond belief. I want to say thank you to this administration, to the beautiful governor that we have here. I love you, I trust you, and I vetted you spiritually, so I know that I can trust you. And I want you to know that I appreciate everything that you've done because it directly affects me, and I thank you. You too, Lieutenant Governor. You are our first Black Lieutenant Governor. And Pride season was started off by trans women of color. That resilience, that power, that willing to speak knowledge to power and stand up in the face of adversity and say it won't work. So I thank you for including me. I thank you for being intentional about supporting the work that we do and supporting me because my life depends on it, and so many others. I don't even know where I went. I'm sorry. I'm glad to be here. God is good, and I want you all to know that this is not about party. It's about people. And once politics remembers people, it'll be better for all of us. So thank you. And I get a chance to introduce the beautiful governor that I love so much. And I'm sorry if I made a blunder emotionally. But thank you so much. Good morning. And I present to you our beautiful governor, Gretchen Whitmer.
Thank you. I think Janice so beautifully underscores why what we're doing here is so important to our state, to our future. And I want to thank her, and I want to thank the legislators who are bringing this forward, Equality Michigan. This is a group effort, and it's important for every one of us in Michigan. Whether you identify as a member of the LGBT community or just simply as a Michigander who wants to see our state thrive and see this become a state where it doesn't matter who you are, you have real opportunity and protection and respect under the law. It's time to get Michigan on the right side of history. In the year 2019, nobody should be fired from their job or evicted from their home based on who they love or how they identify. It is time for us to amend the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act. Anyone who's ever been to a Pride event during the month of June knows that it is a celebration. It is hopeful. It is about forward-looking and changing our state to reflect our values here in the state of Michigan. This is a great state, but the greatest thing about the state of Michigan are the people who call this place home, all of us. And that's why I am here today, and that's why I am absolutely full-throated support of amending our Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act to ensure that true, full civil rights are extended to every person across the state of Michigan. When we make this the state that respects and protects everyone under the law, we make this a more competitive state. We make this a place where our young people want to stay and others come to for opportunity. It is not just the right thing to do, but that should be good enough. But if it's not, let me make a point that it is also the smart thing to do for our economy, for our future, for our young people, and for our residents who call this state home. And so that's why we are pushing this today, and that's why I am hopeful that I am back here in the very near future signing this bill into law. Thank you all so much.